and you district attorneys and prosecutors, when you have a righteous case presented to your office, prosecute. Do your job. It's a simple formula that if we'll follow as a nation, this trend of horrific crime that we're seeing across our country will begin to decline. As we rise, crime will fall. I thank you all for being here, and I'm honored to introduce my colleague, Pete. Where are you, Pete? Hey, come on, brother.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Congressman Pete Stauber. As a former Duluth police officer for 23 years, I understand the sacrifices made every single day by those who wear the uniform to serve and protect our communities. Every day, law enforcement officers walk out of their homes, leaving their loved ones behind, and put their own lives on the line for the safety and security of others. Policing is both a dangerous and noble and honorable profession. That's why it's critical that we have the backs of our brothers and sisters in the blue and brown now more than ever. We must show gratitude for their sacrifice. Far too many people have used anti-police rhetoric, which has led to a huge uptick in violence against law enforcement. We must continue to strongly denounce the reckless and radical defund and disparage the police movement. Our House Republican majority is committed to backing the blue. Republicans don't need election year polling to stand with law enforcement. My time in uniform may be over, but my watch will never end. May God bless all the brave men and women serving our communities. And now it's my honor to introduce Representative Anthony D'Esposito from New York.
Well, thank you, and it is an honor to stand with a conference that I know stands with my brothers and sisters in blue. We started Police Week on Thursday, leaving the steps of the Capitol, led by our great speaker, on a bike tour from the steps of the People's House to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial. And as we rode through the streets of our great capital, we made it clear that we are members that stand with law enforcement. We don't just stand with them when it's beneficial to us. We stand with them 24/7, 365. I visited the memorial many times in my life. And on Thursday, after the bike ride, on Saturday, I shared some time at the vigil with some of my colleagues that are here. Hearing the names of hundreds of men and women from every corner of this nation who made that ultimate sacrifice. They left their loved ones, they suited up, and they went out on the streets, never to return home again. And as we read and recited each and every name that was lost in 2022, I thought about the inscription at the Law Enforcement Memorial. And it was something that I mentioned on Thursday at the bike ride because I think it embodies everything that Police Week is about. And under the lion it says, "It's not how they died that made them heroes, it's how they lived." And I reflect back on my career in the New York City Police Department, serving as a proud detective. And I think back to the night with just under a year on patrol and hearing Russell Timoshenko in Brooklyn South putting over a car stop for a car that was stolen. And as they exited the vehicle, took fire Both him and his partner shot, and his partner screaming in the radio that they were taking fire. Russell's family immigrated here. They volunteered at their local church. He was the first person in his family to serve as law enforcement, gunned down in the streets of New York City because he wore a uniform. I think about Mia Soto's familia, who was shot point-blank range into her patrol car because she wore a uniform. She was a single mother. And yesterday, her children and grandchildren celebrated another Mother's Day without her. It wasn't about how she died, it was about how she lived. I think about Stephen McDonald. Many of you have heard his story, and I shared it the other day, but it's one to hear again. Stephen McDonald was born and raised on Long Island, lived in my district. And he was a young cop in Central Park, shot in the head at point-blank range by young thugs. He survived and spent his life promoting peace and promoting forgiveness. And years back, after a long fight and battle, he returned home, eventually losing his life from the gunshot wounds that day. But it wasn't about how he died, it was about how he lived. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we talk about Police Week, yes, we should back the blue. Yes, every member of the United States House of Representatives should be supporting the bills that are on the floor this week. But we know they won't, because some of them are cowards, and they don't want to stand up and say that they support the police. They want to defund law enforcement. They want to see drugs and violence reign our streets. But that's not the country that we believe in. That's not the country that so many people gave their lives for. And that's why we, as a conference, are going to keep fighting. So use this week, Police Week, to remember those who have made the ultimate sacrifice and think about that inscription on the wall. It's not how they died that made them heroes, it's how they lived. The New York City Police Department has a motto, Fidelis ad mortem, faithful unto death. Every member of law enforcement on that memorial that many of us will visit this week, they remained Fidelis ad mortem. I'd now like to turn it over to Representative Mike Ezell.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming out here tonight. I want to thank the leadership in this House. Every one of you, every member in this House, you have shown nothing but support for our law enforcement since I have walked in here day one. I spent 42 years in police service, and I tell you, if I had to do it all over again, I'd do it again. Today is Peace Officers Memorial Day. Too many times over my 42-year career, I have had to go and visit a grave site. I have had to go and see widows. I have had to spend time with people that have lost their family members. And let me tell you something, that's not something easy to do. But these men and women that have given their life up for the service of others so that you can sleep peacefully each night, they do that because they love this country. They love their community. They love their family, and they want better for you and for the safety of you and your family. I ask each and every one of you today, if you don't know a cop, find one. Get to know them, and you'll see just what kind of person they really are. They love people, they love serving, and they are the guy that shows up at 2 o'clock in the morning when it's pouring down rain and there's nobody else to call. You call the police. So the next time you think that you want to say something negative about a police officer, think about who you're going to call when things are all gone wrong. You call your local police. Again, I cannot thank this leadership enough for the way that you have treated me since I have been here. God bless America. God bless our police officers. Thank you.
I feel very honored to serve in a group that a number have served. Pete Stauber, he didn't tell you, he was wounded in his line of work. It wasn't a small shot. He got shot in the head, went back to do the job. D'Esposito, passion from the heart. He didn't show you the ring that he wears, but he never forgets the detective has never left his life. When we were at the memorial, we laid a wreath, and he talked the stories just what he talked here. I went over to lay a wreath for the Kern County Sheriff Officer, Philip Campus. He went to the same elementary school, same junior high as I did. I was a little older than him. He's 2 young kids, talked to his wife just last week. He was on the SWAT team. And it's not a job. When I sat with the SWAT team, they went to a call, domestic dispute, father killing his family. He didn't wait around till it was safe for him to get out. He got out, saved a few family members, but gave his life doing it. His wife said, "Thank you for never forgetting." And that's really, we had a change in election. I hope you feel the change in Congress. That's what this is about. This is 1 week, but it's every day. And we walk across this country, I think you see it time and again. For every place that wanted to defund the police, you know they regret it. Doesn't matter where you live in the community, you want to be safe. And we're hopeful we can change the turn of what the damage they have done. And that's what this is all about. With that, I'm going to give CNN the first question because they were here early.
Thank you. Major calls to provide back to blue. Do you believe the actions taken by the U.S. Capitol Police officer who shot Ashley Babbitt were appropriate, or do you think that he was acting like a thug in the words of the former president?
Well, you've asked me this question before, and we've answered it many times there. When you look at it, he had a job to defend this Capitol, and that's what he was going through doing. Yes?
Can I get 2 questions, one on this, one another?
You were late, but okay.
On this topic, do you support giving line-of-duty benefits to police officers who die by suicide in uniform?
Well, most police officers are not federal police officers. They're working for the city and the counties, and they usually make that decision. But we see the job time and again, especially when people are out there saying defunding the police, the suicide that is happening and rampant throughout. I think we need to make sure we're interjecting to protect these individuals not to have the suicide. So from a federal end, it's not a place that we vote on, but from a state level. But I think from a federal end, we should be looking at this, and it's also coming in when you think about law enforcement. If you've been to the border, our border agents, suicide is up high because the pressure they're under, the job they're not able to do, where they're being put off. I was just down there a couple months ago, and it was one of the #1 topics that another suicide had happened that day. I think we've got to start looking at how can we interact earlier to protect them. On our own Capitol Police officers, I would go bike riding with a number of them, and suicide is high within our own Capitol Police. So yes, I would seriously look at that because it's a part of the line of the duty.
Great. And second question, would you say that President Biden is now negotiating on the debt limit?
Well, let's just look at the facts. We have a meeting tomorrow with the 4 leaders talking about the debt ceiling. We'll have staff in a room talking about the debt ceiling. I don't know what he calls that, but everybody else would call it negotiating.
Do you have, just now that these meetings are broken up for the day, or close to, do you have any update how you feel about negotiations?
Look, if we were sitting in the room that we were today and it was February, I'd feel good about it. We just had our secretary say June 1st we could run out of money. We only have so many days left. The president decided to wait 100 days before he would negotiate. He treated this the same way he treated the border. He wanted to ignore the problem. When I became speaker, one of the first things I requested is a meeting with the president. And I only got the meeting on February 1st. And I wanted to sit down with him to talk about how could we solve the debt ceiling problem, curve the way we've been spending money, find places we can save for the taxpayers. I mean, who would think if you appropriated COVID money that sat there for 2 years, that you passed a bill that the pandemic is over, that You could pull that money back with savings. What about growing our economy? Instead of watching our energy bills go up and the stock market go down, what about having the stock market go up where retirement accounts go higher, where you have more money in your pocket because your energy costs are less? What about the idea of helping people get back into the workforce because the supply chain will be better, the work requirements, helping people work? All of that I felt would be very positive. I talked to the president about it back then. He wanted to ignore us. And the only body in all of Congress are the Republicans who raised the debt ceiling. And we did it way in advance before Janet Yellen told us when the deadline was, because we didn't want to be here. So no, I don't think we're in a good place. I know we're not. This ignoring the problem, thinking it's going to go away, he could bumble his way just into a default like he did on the border. That's what we didn't want to have happen. So we raised the debt limit. We're protecting. I don't know, maybe his secret plan is to wait till the last minute and pass our bill. I'm okay with that.
What does this meeting tomorrow, what does a successful meeting look like to you? What would need to happen to make you feel a little bit better about it?
They would have to get serious about negotiating. They would have to really talk about where they're going to go. Look, the way the founders designed this whole government, the House takes an action, the Senate takes an action, you go to conference, the president decides he's going to sign it. Unfortunately, only one house has taken action. But it seems to be a continual pattern. When D.C. wanted to decriminalize all the actions, the House took an action, the president said he'd veto it, 170-some Democrats voted against it, and then it passed the Senate against Schumer's beliefs, and the president signed it. When we had a border with Title 42 going to be lifted, they ignored the problem, the House again took action. We are looking for solutions. But we'd really like somebody to work with us instead of against us. Yes, sir.
You mentioned the border.
Yes.
Some members of the conference have expressed support for including border security measures within the debt ceiling bills. That's something you support?
Look, I think the president, I told him early on, if he finds some other policies that we can put in to make the country safer, make it stronger, I'm more than willing to talk about that. I'm just not sure. In the Senate, they haven't passed anything, but I can't say that. They did name March Maine Maple Syrup Month. So if Schumer needs to put that into, I'll look the other way. Yes. Look, if you look at, we all know how this works. When President Trump was in office and Nancy Pelosi would not pass a clean debt ceiling, when she said their party would not do it, he assigned Mnuchin, and then they negotiated. Same thing with President Bush, same thing with Obama. Unfortunately, here is the way the president has ignored it for 100 days, and then he still hasn't taken it serious. We only have so many days left in session to deal with this.
So you would like bilateral talks between you and the president without...
You know, I haven't hid from that. That's been from the very first day. When I went to meet with the president, it was the president and I. If the president comes to an agreement, the Democrats in the Senate will vote for it. The House will pass it if we are all in agreement. Why do we waste more time going around and around, not solving any of the real problems? I think you're putting the country in jeopardy when you do that. Yes, ma'am.
President Biden is scheduled to go to Japan and Australia later this week. He's leaving later this week. Do you think you should still go in light of where negotiations are?
Look, I think an American president should focus on the solutions of America. And I think it shows your values and your priorities. I just watched a border where we didn't focus upon. I watched a debt ceiling come before us that is very serious. I watched this president, when he was senator, vote against debt ceilings. And he said it didn't go far enough to cut and save. My question to the president is, how big a debt is too big? Is $32 trillion, if that's not big enough, that's bigger than our entire economy. And this whole time he wouldn't talk to me for 100 days. You know what happened? If you look at the Congressional Budget Office, our debt went up $100 billion more. How much more do you want to charge every new child born in America? Is $100,000 enough? How much do you want to indebt the next generation? Because he wants to spend more money we spent during the pandemic. He looks at the next 10 years. We will pay $10.5 trillion in interest. But historically, since 1940 until today, those 83 years, we only paid $9 trillion. He wants to continue to spend the next generation's money. So the real question is, what will he prioritize? What are his values? And how much is too much? You know, what was interesting, I've been through a lot of hearings as members of Congress, and I remember years ago, the Joint Chief came to a hearing, and they asked him, what is the greatest threat to our nation? He didn't say Russia. He didn't say China. You know what he said? Our debt. Every great society has collapsed when they've overextended themselves. And can you seriously look, and I asked the president this, can you tell me, do you not believe there's not one thing in all the spending that we spend that we can't save? How long has he argued with me that money that has sat there for more than 2 years that we spent on COVID, that the pandemic is over, that we can't bring it back to the taxpayer? You know, everybody else is back to work. In the House, we passed a bill to have the federal employees to come back to work. He wants to veto it. He's fighting why every other American goes back to work. He signed a bill that the pandemic's over, and we have half of the federal employees not showing up for work. I don't know how you look at a hardworking taxpayer and look them in the eye and say you're doing a good job or you're focused on solutions for America. Look, there's a lot of problems around the world, but we got a really big problem right here, and I think it takes everybody's attention to get it done. You already asked too. I'll come back, yes.
You sort of alluded to it, but you believe that President Biden is negotiating with you. Some of the conservatives in your party say that they don't want any negotiated bill that less than what you passed. Are you concerned at all about losing some of their support?
No, I'm really concerned that the Senate hasn't passed anything. I'm really concerned that the president waited 100 days before he'd even talk to us. I'm really concerned about the president's continual spending of what he will do to Medicare and Social Security. I'm really concerned about, instead of the Democrats sitting down, realizing we have a division in government and being honest and adult in discussing this, but simply lying about what we're doing. You'll see tomorrow that no, we don't cut veterans, we actually add money to it. The only veterans got cut was this weekend when they got removed from their hotel rooms. So the president would move those who have crossed into this country illegally and take the rooms away from people who are Bronze Stars, who are Purple Hearts. I think that's wrong. So no, that concerns me. Yes.
When you meet with the president tomorrow, what are your demands or your...
My demands?
Yeah, what's your message going to be to the president tomorrow? What is
Mr. President,
the purpose of this meeting?
well, the president's called the meeting. I told the president I'll meet him anytime he wants to. I will tell him time is of the essence. And it's very simple. We want to limit, save, and grow. We want to limit the outside growth of government because we are growing too big. So you know what? In future, cap what we're spending and put it by 1%. It's not really a Republican idea. Joe Manchin's idea. We want to help people get back into the workforce. So we like work requirements. You know what? When this president was a senator, he voted for work requirements. It's shown statistic after statistic. It puts people back in. It helps them earn more. And you know what? It helps America with our supply chain so we're less dependent upon China. In limiting our spending, it curbs inflation that they created by adding $6 trillion. So let's stop the inflation. Let's make our economy stronger. And let's grow our economy by, we passed a bill, H.R. 1, that makes us energy independent. We want to be able to build things again in America. So let's cut the red tape, permitting reform. Instead of just talking about things, let's actually do it. And we only have so many days to get it done. So if we're just going to sit in a room with staffers talking, it's not going to happen. And if that's the pattern he wants to do, you know who gets hurt? The American public, but more importantly, everybody who's on Social Security and everybody who's on Medicare. Because his spending level, what the Congressional Budget Office says, for the first time, he's the first president ever to do this in a 10-year window, that they'll go insolvent. So that's an automatically 20% cut. We don't want that to happen. So you know the good thing about this? In April, the Republicans raised the debt ceiling. curved how much we were spending, and proposed a growth in our government. So you wouldn't sit there at the market every day going down. The market would go up, you'd have more jobs and more people in the workforce, and we'd be less dependent upon China. Thank you all very much. We are seeing in real time the effects of reckless government spending, record inflation, and the hardship that it causes, rising interest rates, supply chain shortages, instability in the banking system, and uncertainty across the board. Now, unlike President Biden, I don't dismiss Americans' fear about higher prices. I share them. And I share their conviction that we must change course before it's too late.
I'm gonna start bringing a tomato box to these.
We'll wait for everybody. So quiet now. You get a new jacket? Looks nice. Yeah. Juan, come on here. You're going to speak. Where's Mario? Where's Tom? Come on, guys. You come down here. Come down here. You guys kind of worked on the bill. You should be right here. Yeah. How many people notice you got a new jacket besides me? Just me, huh? I pay attention. All right, moments ago, House Republicans passed the strongest border security bill this country has ever seen. This bill secures the border from President Biden's record crossings, record carelessness, and record chaos. Securing the border is one of the top priorities, and it is the priorities of the leaders who are behind me. I do want to thank Mario Diaz-Balart, Tom McClintock, Jim Jordan, Mark Green, Mike McCall, Elise Stefanik, and Tom Emmer. I want to give a special thanks to Steve Scalise. Not only did he help pass this bill on the floor, but he has been working for 2 years to educate the members, leading Codels to the border and working with our task forces and our committees. And I want to thank every single member of this conference. This is not something easy to do. By passing H.R. 2, House Republicans have shown we're focused on addressing our nation's biggest challenges. By contrast, the White House has 2 years to plan for the end of Title 42. We all knew the deadline, but the White House produced no plan, missed the deadline, and bumbled into another crisis. Even President Biden, who has only been to the border one time in 50 years, says this: there is going to be chaos for a little while. Since the White House keeps missing deadlines, I want you to know how we did it. We identified the problem. Rather than ignoring it, we listened to the American people. And then we took action. Numerous members of our conference for the last 4 years have been traveling to the border, not just to meet with border agents, but meet with the elected officials. It didn't matter what party they were registered. To meet with local ranchers, landowners, businessmen and women. To meet with the people being affected day in and day out. To school board members, where their schools had to be closed because of the chases and the cars coming across. To the families that lost loved ones because of the fentanyl that's coming across. I remember down with Juan Ciscomani with the new mayor, telling a story of his own daughter, calling her and telling her that she can't go outside, another car chase was coming by. This car chase didn't end in the manner we all wish it would. It killed a woman he told us about. She was on her way to a retirement dinner where she had retiring from work of all those years to spend the time with her grandchildren to travel the country ended because the border was not secure. We even had our committees, when we took the majority, not to stay in Washington to gather all your information, but to travel to the border itself. If you're going to write a bill about the border, you ought to learn firsthand. Homeland, Judiciary. We talked to Border Patrol agents, heard the frustration in their voices, and saw the exhaustion in their faces. But the House Democrats, who even belonged to the committee, refused to go. One of the ranking members, Nadler, made fun of us going to it, said it didn't mean anything. I think you ought to look to the family members who've lost their children to fentanyl and tell them that it didn't mean anything. If they had attended, I believe they would have voted with us. You cannot listen to what we had heard and vote against this bill today. The do-nothing Democrats must not continue to repeat this pattern on the debt limit. Tomorrow will be the 100th day since I first sat down with the President on February 1st to identify a problem, to know the deadline would be coming. We all know that the deadline for default is June 1st. Why are we in this situation? Because inflation Democrats added $6 trillion. They harmed every single family by bringing inflation to our country. And now 3 of the 4 largest bank failures in American history has happened just in a couple months. We watch people bringing home their paycheck. It doesn't go as far. We watch Democrats treat the exact same way. The House passed a plan to avoid the default. We cap spending, we grow the economy, and we responsibly raise the debt limit. And there's only 15 days to go. How has the President handled this? The exact same way he's handled the border. He ignores it and hopes it goes away. But President Biden and Senator Schumer are stuck on no. They have no plan, no proposed savings, and no clue. Apparently, President Biden doesn't want a deal. He wants a default. Mr. President, my message is very simple. Do not miss another deadline like you just missed on Title 42. Our country cannot afford it. The Republicans will always act responsibly and will also always look for solutions. With that, let me bring up our majority leader who's worked so hard to make this day come to fruition, Steve Scalise.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and congratulations to our Speaker. How about this team? Once again, House Republicans came together to solve a major crisis facing our nation, a crisis that was created by President Biden's failures. President Biden walked in on his first day in office with a commitment to open up America's southern border. He took direct action that has opened up our southern border and started a flood that we have never seen before. Over 5 million people have come into our country illegally since Joe Biden took the oath of office. That's more people than the entire population of my home state of Louisiana that have come into this country illegally. And it's getting worse. Today, the day that we passed this important bill to secure America's border, the strongest bill that this Congress has ever passed, at a time when our border's never been less secure. And you had the Secretary of Homeland Security today, Secretary Mayorkas, said the border's not open. Well, Mr. Secretary, if 10,000 people coming across our border illegally is not open, I would hate to see what you think is an open border. This is a crisis that needs to be fixed. The House didn't sit around waiting on the Secretary or the President to do their job, even though they failed. We took action to protect every community in America that is now a border town. The devastation from our open border is affecting every community in America. Today in America, 300 young people will die from drug overdoses related to the fentanyl coming across our open southern border because of President Biden's failure. Tomorrow, another 300 young people will die. When is the president going to finally stand up and do something to stop those deaths?
Do those deaths not matter to President Biden? They matter to us, and we took action to do something about it. It's long past time the Senate do something to address this crisis. It's long past time for President Biden and Secretary Mayorkas to do something to address this crisis. If they're going to continue to fail the American people, we're not going to stop working for those families who are struggling under the weight of the devastation of these failed policies. And the man who helped us get the votes to pass this critically important bill for the American people is our whip, Mr. Tom Emmer.
Thank you, Steve. More migrants have died at our southern border in the last 12 months than at any 12-month period in the history of this country. Cartels are trafficking children and smuggling deadly fentanyl into our communities. Border Patrol has apprehended nearly 200 illegal crossers who are on the terrorist watch list. Border Patrol agents are exhausted and being pulled off the front lines with morale at an all-time low. And all of this was happening before Title 42 was set to expire. In the last few days, we've gotten a glimpse at what our southern border will look like if Biden's open borders agenda continues. 10,000 crossings per day, as the majority leader just said, pure chaos in the speaker's comments, the president's words himself, pure chaos, all because Joe Biden and his administration has let the world know our borders are open. And make no mistake, it is intentional and it is not humane. But today, Kevin McCarthy and House Republicans have stepped up to provide another common sense solution where Joe Biden and the Democrats have failed. After 2 years of intentional disregard from the White House, House Republicans passed legislation that builds the border wall, strengthens asylum laws, ends Biden's mass parole programs, and humanely addresses the horrific child trafficking business at our southern border. This bill is simple. It disincentivizes illegal immigration and reinstates the policies that were working before Joe Biden got in the Oval Office and let his self-made border crisis get out of hand. It's a slap in the face to our border communities, to law-abiding citizens, and to legal immigrants that the Biden White House and Schumer Senate are already set in their opposition to this bill. Their obstruction means innocent children will continue to be inhumanely subjected to sex trafficking and child labor. Legitimate cases of asylum will continue to be stifled in an overrun system. And illegal immigration will continue to be incentivized while legal immigrants wait years to become citizens the right way. It might not be great optics for a Democrat Party that has embraced illegal immigration and total lawlessness as part of their platform. But it is the humane thing for Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer to do to address the crisis head on and make sure the Border Act becomes law. Migrant lives and the safety of American communities depend on it. And with that, our conference chair, Elise Stefanik.
Thank you, Tom. I am so honored to stand here with my House Republican colleagues. Yet again, the mainstream media underestimated this House Republican majority. And yet again, House Republicans delivered results for the American people with the passage of the Secure the Border Act, the strongest border bill in the history of the United States Congress. This bill was one of our key pillars of our commitment to America. Since day one, when Joe Biden was sworn into office, Joe Biden's policies have caused this catastrophic border crisis. And it's not just a border crisis. It's a national security crisis, an economic crisis, a crime crisis, and a humanitarian crisis. And the American people know that Joe Biden's failed open border policies have turned every district into a border district and every state into a border state. In my home district in upstate New York in the North Country, we've seen an over 800% increase in illegal crossings in the Swanton sector on the northern border just in the last year. Border Patrol officers who I represent have been transferred over and over again to our southern border to deal with the unprecedented surge of illegal crossings. Fentanyl overdoses ravage communities across this country in each and every one of our districts. House Republicans Secure the Border Act will end the Biden border crisis by finishing the wall, advancing border technology, supporting our brave Border Patrol officers, ending catch and release, and fulfilling our commitment to America, a nation that is safe. And one of the leaders for years, for decades on this issue, I'm honored to introduce my colleague, Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me start by quoting the President's actual SAP veto message on H.R. 2. He claims that the administration's approach to border strategy is, quote, safe, orderly, and humane. You know, one wouldn't really have to be delusional to believe that almost 300 Americans dying every single day due to fentanyl, mostly coming from the southern border, is safe. Frankly, one would have to be severely out of touch with reality to say, to relinquish control of the southern border to those narco-terrorist cartels that are now the ones who determine who comes in to the southern border. And one would have to be really callous to say that the death of 900 migrants and nearly 90,000 children, minors, lost and trafficked is humane. That's not humane. That's insane. Since the Biden administration and, frankly, the Democrats, since they've totally abdicated their responsibility to uphold our national security and protect the American people, I am so proud that the House Republicans, once again, have stepped up. H.R. 2 secures the borders. It provides much-needed support to our brave heroes, the men and women, the officers of the CBP. It protects children, those exploited children that even the New York Times has stated are being exploited. It protects them from exploitation and human trafficking. It defunds the narco-terrorist, multi-billion-dollar cartels that are now the ones who decide who comes in through the southern border and who are running the southern border. It streamlines our broken asylum system that is hurting so many, including those who have legitimate claims for asylum. And I'm so proud, it reestablishes the rule of law. The rule of law. I am so proud of this Republican conference. En la carta oficial que el presidente sacó hoy, esta semana, en su oposición a esta ley, el presidente de la administración dice que la situación en la frontera está segura, organizada y humana. Eso lo puso por escrito la administración. O sea, francamente hay que estar severamente desconectado de la realidad para decir que los casi 300 norteamericanos, jóvenes, que mueren todos los días, eso es porque hay una frontera segura, organizada y humana. Que la muerte de los 900 inmigrantes, el número más grande de la historia de los Estados Unidos, que fallecieron el año pasado, en este año, y 90,000 niños que están siendo abusados y traficados, que eso es seguro, organizado y humano. Y cederle el control de la frontera sur a los narcocarteles, que son los que deciden ahora quién entra y quién sale y por qué precio. Que de alguna forma eso es seguro, organizado y humano. No. Esta ley sí es humana. Desafortunadamente, el presidente y los demócratas rehúsan defender la seguridad nacional de los Estados Unidos y proteger al pueblo norteamericano. Y por eso estoy tan orgulloso que hoy los republicanos de la Cámara tomaron acción y acción seria y positiva. Esta ley fortalece la seguridad de nuestra frontera. Brinda apoyo necesario a nuestros agentes oficiales en la frontera. Protege a los niños, a las niñas, a las mujeres que están siendo abusadas en este proceso. Mejora
nuestro sistema de asilo. Y muy importante, restablece el Estado de Derecho, que es la razón por la cual todo inmigrante que lleva generaciones o que está tratando de llegar ahora, viene a este país. Restablece el Estado de Derecho. It is my privilege to introduce a man who, if anybody has any doubt, the definition of a workhorse, of a man who is keen and smart and never stops working. What a privilege it is to introduce my colleague, Mr. McClintock.
Thank you. You know, we tried to do this a few years ago with a much larger majority, and we failed. The difference this time was the Republican leadership, starting with Speaker Kevin McCarthy and, of course, Chairman Jim Jordan and the rest of the team that wouldn't take no for an answer, that kept everybody talking, kept everybody together, ultimately to reach a common conclusion to pass this historic legislation with a much slender majority. You know, our borders were secure on Inauguration Day. The Remain in Mexico policy had slowed illegal immigration to a trickle. The border wall was nearing completion. ICE was actually enforcing court-ordered deportations. And yet that very afternoon, Joe Biden reversed all of these policies and initiated the largest illegal mass migration in history. And you know, I've never understood how our schools are made better by packing classrooms with non-English speaking students, or how our hospitals are made more accessible by flooding our emergency rooms with illegals demanding uncompensated care, or how our communities are made safer by introducing criminal cartels and flooding them with fentanyl, or how working families are helped by flooding the labor market with cheap illegal labor, or how our social safety net is strengthened by adding millions of impoverished dependent aliens to it. This measure restores the policies that secured our border and makes it harder for future presidents to refuse to enforce the law. You know, without enforcing our immigration laws, we have no borders. And if we have no borders, we have no country. History warns us that countries that either cannot or will not secure their borders simply aren't around very long. Now the Senate needs to act. And if it doesn't, then ultimately the American people need to decide how far down this road they want to continue, because this will continue until the people responsible for these policies are removed from office. And I thank all of you, and I'm very pleased to introduce Representative Juan Ciscomani of Arizona's 6th District, who did yeoman work in keeping the sides together and bringing us together. So thank you.
I stand here today as a proud product of the American dream. I became a United States citizen in 2006, and today, 17 years later, I can stand before you as a member of the United States Congress. I also stand here as a representative of southeastern Arizona. What's happening at the border is not part of the American dream my family pursued, and thousands of other families also continue to pursue today. We've seen babies abandoned in rivers, migrants dying in deserts, high-speed car chases through neighborhoods, and 85,000 children disappear after being released from HHS custody. We have a border crisis, a humanitarian crisis, and on the front lines are our border communities. Americans have been failed by the government designed to protect them. While our country suffers because of this administration's inaction, House Republicans have passed a solution. H.R. 2 gives our agents and officers the resources they desperately need, closes loopholes in an abused asylum system, and it protects innocent children from harm. This last part was very important to me from the get-go. I'm a dad of 6. My kids' ages range from 4 to 14. I can't help it but look at these kids and think of my own kids, and think of when my family brought me here as a young boy as well, and what I was thinking and what I was going through. This bill is a step away from the chaos we are seeing and a step closer to helping others achieve the American dream that I've been so blessed to live. Estoy aquí como un orgulloso producto del sueño americano. Me convertí en ciudadano americano en el 2006 y hoy, 17 años después, estoy aquí frente a ustedes como miembro del Congreso de Estados Unidos. También estoy aquí como representante del sureste de Arizona. Lo que está ocurriendo en la frontera no es parte del sueño americano. Para mi familia no es parte del sueño americano que mi familia vino a buscar y que otras miles de familias también están viniendo a buscar. Hemos visto bebés abandonados en ríos, emigrantes que mueren en el desierto y persecuciones de autos por vecindarios. Y 85,000 menores de edad han desaparecido después de haber sido liberados de la custodia del Departamento de Salud y Servicios Humanos de Estados Unidos. Tenemos una crisis en la frontera, tenemos una crisis humanitaria y las líneas de fuego son nuestras comunidades de la frontera. El gobierno le ha fallado a los estadounidenses en vez de protegerlos. Mientras nuestro país sufre por la falta de acción de esta administración, los republicanos de la Cámara de Representantes hemos pasado una solución. La ley HR 2 brinda a nuestros agentes y oficiales los recursos necesarios que desesperadamente necesitan. También cierra los hoyos del sistema de asilo que han estropeado y protegen muy bien a los niños inocentes de cualquier edad. Este proyecto de ley es un paso fuera del caos que estamos viviendo y es un paso más cerca hacia ayudar a alcanzar a todos los demás el sueño americano que yo he tenido la oportunidad de vivir. Muchas gracias. Thank you. And now it's my honor to introduce one of the leaders that have made this possible, and that is Chairman Mike McCall. Sir?
Thank you. I want to thank the Speaker for doing something that no other Speaker in the history of this Congress has done, and that's passing the strongest border security package. I want to thank you personally. Thank you, sir. Because he brings us together. And I want to thank leadership, the chairman involved. It's a real team effort to get here. You know, I've been dealing with this issue for quite some time. I was a federal prosecutor, U.S. attorney in Texas on the border, and it was bad. I was chairman of Homeland Security Committee, and we passed border bills, but I've never seen the border like it is today. It is absolutely out of control. Even the chief of the Border Patrol said we have lost operational control, and we lost it to the drug cartels. They are on our border, and nobody sees it more than my Texas brethren and women behind me who bear the brunt of this. My legislature appropriated $4.5 billion just this term to deal with a federal responsibility. And you know, the sad thing is it didn't have to happen. It was a self-inflicted wound. We are on the path to securing this border under the previous administration. But what did this Biden administration do? On day one, with a stroke of a pen, rescind the migrant protection protocols, remain in Mexico, which means you have to remain in Mexico pending your asylum. When they rescinded that, the cartels aren't stupid. They understood. Hey, it's open for business. Green lights on, come on in. And guess what they did? And they knew if they could get people in, that catch and release would apply. 5 million encounters, 5 million people in this country in the shadows, no legal status. What in the world are we going to do with 5 million people? And the saddest thing is that it's the children that die on the way. 35% get raped on the dangerous journey. These stash houses, Mayorkas is guilty of child abuse, in my opinion, by not vetting the sponsors of the parents, supposedly, or sponsors of these children, allowing 10 to 20, 30 kids to go to a stash house, then to become victims of sex trafficking, child slavery, forcing them into a criminal network and a criminal enterprise. The 100,000 deaths of young people to fentanyls pouring, coming from China, going through Mexico, coming into the United States. My children have been to 5 funerals. Friends, dear friends, who took what they thought was Xanax or ADD medication and they never woke up. This is real. That's more than what we lost in Vietnam over 2 decades. It's just unacceptable. But today, we're bringing solutions as Republicans. You know, the first bill I ever introduced in Congress 20 years ago was to end catch and release. I am so proud of this day because this Republican majority got it done. And we're going to end this policy. We're going to return to the policies that worked and stop this nightmare that's happening all across this country. So I want to now turn it over to a great leader, chairman of the Homeland Security Committee. Worked very, very hard together, had a markup till 3 o'clock in the morning. And thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chairman McCall, for that introduction and your friendship and mentorship. A lot of people in this room made the prediction that when we elected our speaker, this group of Republicans would have a hard time coming together. That the conflict that happened in that episode would divide us so much that we'd get nothing done. Well, 87,000 IRS agents, gone. An energy bill that will turn back on American energy, done. A debt ceiling, responsibly increased. And now, and many, many other things, and now, the most conservative, strongest border security bill in the history of the Congress. Yeah, sometimes conflict can divide, but in this case, it made us one team. And the work that has happened to make this bill a reality today on the floor, there are tons of people to thank. It starts with the leader and the speaker doing amazing work, mentoring all of us that were out on the front lines. It goes to my committee, the men and women in that committee who busted their butts to work together to get it done, and our staffs. I have to thank the staff of the committee for doing an amazing job. And the leader and the speaker's staff too. But most of all, I want to thank the men and women of the Customs and Border Protection, the blue and the green, who are out there serving this great nation, sacrificing themselves under horrible conditions brought on them by the decisions of this president and secretary. And make no mistake about it, every American is at risk. You got children? How about that little baby in a VRBO in Florida, crawling around on the floor, that died by encountering fentanyl left by the previous renter? If you have children and you're going to a hotel, think about that. And thank Joe Biden and Alejandro Mayorkas. Every American is at risk with this open border, and we have had it. The American people have had it, and we have responded with a great bill. And I ask the senators, as the wave of people come across the southern border and cities are declaring states of emergency, to think about it. You say you're going to not support this bill? Think about it. Americans are suffering. Americans are dying. Do something. Vote to send this bill to the President of the United States. And let's have that president who has ignored this speaker on the debt ceiling, ignored the border, ignored the economy, ignored the veterans who sacrificed so much in Afghanistan and walked away. Let's get him to the table and do something for this country for once. Pass this bill, secure our border, and save this great country. I will be followed by one of the greats, my mentor, Jim Jordan.
So I didn't know I was last till a few minutes ago, but I'll just say this. On January 3rd, I gave a nominating speech for the Speaker. And I said in that speech, I think our task this Congress is pretty straightforward. Pass the bills to fix the problems, rein in the crazy spending, and do our oversight, do our constitutional duty. And this Congress, we're doing that. House Republicans are doing, we're doing the oversight. We passed the debt ceiling bill, as Chairman Green just mentioned, that would actually get control of the crazy spending. And contrary to what Punchbowl reported this morning, we are passing the bills to fix the problems. We are passing the legislation that we promised the American people we would do. We said we would get rid of 87,000 IRS agents. We did. We said we'd pass an energy bill that made us energy independent. We did. We said we'd pass a parental rights bill. We did. And we said we'd pass immigration enforcement, border security bill. And we did today. I always say we make this job way too complicated. It's really pretty basic. What did you tell the voters you were going to do when you put your name on the ballot and you ran for office? If they elect you, go do what you said. And House Republicans, under the leadership of Speaker McCarthy, are doing exactly that. And the key is we have to continue that for the rest of this Congress and make the American people understand we are representing them at this critical time in American history. With that, I yield back to the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy.
The House Republicans continue to offer solutions. We all knew this date was going to be here, and the White House ignored it. We will not ignore the problems, and we'll continue to work for the American public. That was our commitment to America. It's the commitment we're keeping. With that, let's open up for questions. Yes, Jake.
Can you give us your sense on where the tops are on the debt ceiling?
We just passed H.R. 2, and you want to talk debt ceiling. Well, that's a good question, because it's another issue. It's another issue that the president ignored. The staff has met the last 2 days. We think it's productive for the staff to meet again. I have not seen from there a seriousness of the White House that they want to deal. It seems like they want to default more than they want to deal. Yes. The White House didn't cancel the meeting. All of the leaders decided it's probably in the best of our interest to let the staff meet again before we get back together. It's not a delay. I think from numerous different things. One, couldn't be there tomorrow. I don't think there's enough progress for the leaders to get back together. I don't know having certain ones in the room that's even productive. I think just as I sat down with the president on February 1st, look, we want to be responsible. We want to be sensible. He ignored us now for 100 days. He thought this problem would go away like the border. We didn't want to sit back, just like with the border, so we went to work and we raised the debt ceiling, because we're the only people that can guarantee that we won't hit default, because we've raised it. The Senate has done nothing. They've done nothing with the border. They've done nothing with this. They've done nothing with trying to protect children in their schools with a Parents' Bill of Rights. What have they done about fentanyl? I mean, issue after issue after issue, they continue to ignore them, and we won't. Yes.
Do you expect that there will be?
I expect there'll be a meeting next week, yeah.
And then secondly, on immigration, you know, Senators Sinema and Tillis say that your bill is a good starting point, but they don't think there are 60 votes for it. That being said, they have, at least to deal with the Title 42 expiration, have a bipartisan bill that would at least extend that authority for the next 2 years. They say they've been talking to members here in the House. Is that something you're open to?
Look, we once again just passed a bill. The Senate has done nothing, but I'm thankful that you have bipartisan work over in the Senate, that they're willing to do something on this. I mean, I think Senator Sinema said that the president has ignored this for 2 years. She sees it every day in her state. And just like any other bill, we will pass a bill, the Senate could pass a bill, and we could go to conference and see what we can actually solve. Yes.
So let me understand. You obviously pushed a long time for these meetings with the president.
Mm-hmm.
So now you said all 4 members and the president of the White House Council meeting, the first time the meeting here. If you were pushing so long for these negotiations and things aren't far enough along in these negotiations for the 5 of you to get together, doesn't that say that that wasn't what needed to happen? I mean, that this could have been, it worked out with talks behind the scenes to start.
How do you take something so simple and try to make it complicated? We simply,
But you argued for.
yeah, for 100 days.
We had a meeting the other day.
Yeah.
But now there's not going to be a meeting tomorrow. That doesn't seem to square with what the call was for 9/7.
You're trying to make news out of nothing. So we simply had staff meet. They haven't made progress. We were going to meet on Friday. One of the leaders couldn't be there. They have a funeral they have to attend. So we didn't think it was going to be productive. So we thought, let's meet next week. But you can spin it any way you want. I think the rest of America will understand what it is. Yes?
Are you comfortable with your party's leading presidential candidate not calling Putin a war criminal and not taking sides in Russia versus Ukraine?
What are you referring to?
Trump last night, he would not.
Look, I think we have been very clear about the atrocities that Russia and Putin have presented to this world. I think we've been very clear in our votes as well. So I think we lead with exactly what we've been doing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A few questions. There was an issue some Republican members had with the bill regarding designating cartels as terrorist groups. They cited that it would allow migrants to claim asylum more easily. Was there a way that both concerns could have been addressed? And the second question is, if the House doesn't get that document they subpoenaed the FBI for regarding Biden allegedly taking a bribe from a foreign official, will the House vote to hold Director Wray in contempt of Congress? And finally, what was your reaction to Congresswoman Slade having an anti-Israel ban on the Senate side courtesy of Senator Sanders?
You get them all worked in. Pretty good. I'll just work in reverse order. I think Tlaib has mentioned many times before, it almost feels like there's anti-Semitism, and I will never allow that to happen in this body or on this floor. I've watched members on the other side of the aisle say that time and again, and we will always stand up against that no matter where it is. I just came back from a bipartisan group of members going to the 75th anniversary of Israel. When Israel was created, 11 minutes later, America recognized them. And I think the world is a better place for it. I do not think what Tlaib wanted to do should have happened in this chambers. Unfortunately, you've got a senator on the other side that I guess agrees with her and against the rest of the world. Your other question was about a subpoena to the FBI. There are checks and balances, and there is oversight. Congress has a right to have that knowledge, and I will have a conversation with Director Wray about that and make sure that happens. Your last question was about cartels. Yes, we debate all different parts, and the one thing that I wanted to do is to have an opportunity to truly focus on the cartels, because if any of you have spent time at the border, you will find we do not have operational control. Juan Ciscomani had to leave, but in his district is Tucson. The Sinaloa cartels control Tucson, Arizona. If you go to Tucson, Arizona, you cannot cross the border without paying the Sinaloa. One individual tried to do it on his own. He wasn't captured by our border agents. He was captured by the cartel, beaten, thrown in the back of the car, never found again. If you cross on that area, every single person is dressed the same. They have a camouflage outfit on. Their shoes have rug on the bottom. It is the #1 places of getaways. 71% of people across there are single males. They don't run up to our border agents, they run from them. We actually have to, because it's a big territory, every single day we risk the lives of our American people in the military and on the borders, putting helicopters up trying to rescue people up on the cliffs many times, each and every day. The real challenge here as well is we have to do a lot of this aerial. When the numbers continued to peak, you know what the administration did? They cut the number of balloons that we had, that we could count the number of people that were coming over illegally. So they want to tell you that the numbers are down when it's only growing more. You catch fentanyl time and again from these individuals. So yeah, spend a little time there. You'll be able to see. Yes, ma'am.
Speaker McCarthy, you guys want to cut about $130 billion from the budget. If you take out defense, if you take out DHS, if you take out Veterans Affairs, how are you going to cut that much money from the remaining pie?
Okay, so what you're talking about is in the debt ceiling, we asked that we go back to what we were spending 5 months ago. 5 months ago, we were spending a lot of money. And what happens